The Carter family moved to Cedar Ridge on a bright autumn morning. The gentle sunlight filtered through the fiery red maple trees, with yellow leaves scattered lightly on the clean streets. The small town was nestled among rolling hills, with neat houses and carefully tended gardens. The fresh air and the sound of birds singing from the nearby forests made Cedar Ridge appear like a perfect picture of tranquility. The Carter family's new home was located on a quiet street, surrounded by a white picket fence and a small garden full of blooming flowers. Everything here was neat and orderly, from the well-kept brick roads to the parks with manicured lawns. The whole town seemed to be a symbol of prosperity and peace. However, the beauty of Cedar Ridge couldn't hide another reality. This was a community where differences were rarely welcomed. The Carter family was the only black family to move to the town in many years. Their presence seemed to disrupt the familiar rhythm of life for the town's residents. As they settled in, they quickly noticed the hesitation from their neighbors. Though always wearing friendly and polite smiles, they only received discreet glances from behind windows. David and Jasmine's greetings were often ignored or responded to indifferently. The community meetings the Carter family attended didn't bring more friendliness either. Conversations quickly stopped when they approached. Every morning, Mia stepped onto the yellow bus driven by Mr. Blake, an elderly man with a stern face and eyes that always seemed to scrutinize through the rearview mirror. From the very first time, Mr. Blake was rude to Mia. His short words and curt manner made it clear that she was not welcome. He often mocked Mia when she got on the bus slowly, deliberately stopping the bus at the most inconvenient spots for her, or ignoring her when she needed help with her heavy backpack. The other children on the bus, though not directly involved, neither spoke to nor acknowledged Mia, making her feel isolated and alone. In the afternoon, Jasmine arrived at school to pick up Mia, hoping to check if everything was okay. When she parked near the school gate, Mr. Sam, the security guard, quickly approached, pointing at a no parking sign. He demanded that Jasmine move her car, speaking in an unfriendly tone. Jasmine looked around and noticed other white parents parked nearby without being reprimanded. Although feeling irritated, Jasmine decided to be conciliatory and drove her car to a farther parking lot, not wanting to cause trouble. She just wanted Mia to have a smooth start at her new school. However, this small injustice made Jasmine think deeply. When Mia boarded the bus to return home, Jasmine noticed that her daughter looked more tired than usual. Mia said nothing, silently getting on the bus with a sad look in her eyes, staring out the window. Jasmine sensed that something was wrong, but she didn't know that this was just the beginning of the bigger challenges the family would soon face. Every morning, Mia stepped onto the yellow bus driven by Mr. Blake, an elderly man with a stern face and eyes that always seemed to scrutinize through the rearview mirror. From the very first time, Mr. Blake was rude to Mia. His short words and curt manner made it clear that she was not welcome. He often mocked Mia when she got on the bus slowly, deliberately stopping the bus at the most inconvenient spots for her, or ignoring her when she needed help with her heavy backpack. The other children on the bus, though not directly involved, neither spoke to nor acknowledged Mia, making her feel isolated and alone. In the afternoon, Jasmine arrived at school to pick up Mia, hoping to check if everything was okay. When she parked near the school gate, Mr. Sam, the security guard, quickly approached, pointing at a no parking sign. He demanded that Jasmine move her car, speaking in an unfriendly tone. Jasmine looked around and noticed other white parents parked nearby without being reprimanded. Although feeling irritated, Jasmine decided to be conciliatory and drove her car to a farther parking lot, not wanting to cause trouble. She just wanted Mia to have a smooth start at her new school. However, this small injustice made Jasmine think deeply. When Mia boarded the bus to return home, Jasmine noticed that her daughter looked more tired than usual. Mia said nothing, silently getting on the bus with a sad look in her eyes, staring out the window. Jasmine sensed that something was wrong, but she didn't know that this was just the beginning of the bigger challenges the family would soon face. One rainy afternoon, dark clouds covered the sky over Cedar Ridge, signaling a small storm approaching. Jasmine and David were at home when they received a call from Mia's teacher. The worried voice on the other end informed them that Mia had suddenly fallen ill, showing signs of a high fever, and needed her parents to pick her up immediately. Panicked, Jasmine rushed out of the house, and David quickly prepared an umbrella and raincoat. On their way to the school, the rain poured down heavily, with streams of water hitting the windshield, making Jasmine even more anxious. The image of Mia lying helplessly in the classroom kept flashing through her mind. When they arrived at the gates of Evergreen Elementary, Jasmine quickly stopped the car and got out, walking toward Mr. Sam, who was standing dry under the porch. Jasmine explained the situation, hoping to be allowed to drive into the school grounds to pick up Mia, as the rain was heavy and her daughter was unwell. However, Mr. Sam, with a cold attitude and curt voice, refused her request. He cited the school's rule that parents are not allowed to drive onto the campus, despite the emergency situation Jasmine was describing. Jasmine tried to persuade him further, but Mr. Sam remained unmoved, even turning away as if to end the conversation. With no other option, Jasmine and David took their umbrellas and raincoats and walked through the torrential rain to pick up Mia. The short walk from the school gate to the classroom was not long, but under the heavy rain and cold wind, each step felt heavy. They found Mia sitting curled up in the classroom, her face pale, but her eyes brightened with relief when she saw her parents. When they returned home, Jasmine couldn't stop thinking about Mr. Sam's indifference and lack of compassion. She felt his actions were not only inhumane, but also reflected clear discrimination and inappropriate behavior. Why would he easily deny a reasonable request in such an urgent situation, while Jasmine had previously seen him allow other white parents to drive onto the school grounds to pick up their children without any obstruction? Although Mia's health was not seriously affected after the incident, Mr. Sam's actions left a lasting impact on Jasmine. It wasn't just an injustice, but a painful realization that the color of her skin was the reason she and her family were being treated differently. This incident became a turning point for Jasmine. She realized that her silence and tolerance had only allowed such injustices to continue. This was no longer a small matter. It was an insult and a hurtful experience for her family. Jasmine knew it was time to speak out, not only to protect Mia, but also to fight against the injustices that existed in the Cedar Ridge community. Mia was once again forced off the bus by Mr. Blake at a dangerous spot. The girl was terrified and no longer wanted to go to school. Jasmine and David recognized the seriousness of the issue. They reported the incident to the police and called for support from other families in the area. When Jasmine and David organized the meeting at the Cedar Ridge Community Center, they knew it was their last chance to bring Mia's story to light. In the small room, fluorescent lights flickered, and the atmosphere seemed thick with anxiety and dissatisfaction. At first, only a few families attended, sitting scattered around with cautious expressions. Jasmine stepped forward, microphone in hand, her voice trembling slightly but resolute. She recounted in detail what her family had endured: Mr. Blake's coldness and rudeness, Mr. Sam's indifference and discrimination, and the school's repeated disregard for complaints. When she mentioned the incident where Mia was forced to get off the bus in the rain and walk home, her voice caught. The room was silent. The sound of every breath was almost audible. A black mother sitting at the back of the room stood up, breaking the silence. She shared how her son had also been forced by Mr. Blake to sit at the back of the bus, and every time she asked him to stop at the right spot, he ignored her. Another parent mentioned how Mr. Sam often treated them harshly when they parked to pick up their children, but would laugh and chat friendly with the white parents. The stories, the tears, and the angry glances came in waves, each one adding to the rising tide of discontent. It wasn't just words. Many families brought evidence to back up their claims. One father showed a video of Mr. Blake deliberately not stopping the bus at the designated stop for his child. Another parent played images of Mr. Sam laughing with white parents while telling them to leave. These pieces of evidence were quickly gathered into a strong indictment against the ongoing injustices. Together with other parents, Jasmine and David presented all the evidence at an urgent meeting with the Evergreen School administration. In the large meeting room, with colorful student artwork hanging on the walls, the atmosphere grew tense. Principal Grace Henderson tried to maintain her composure, but it was clear she had not anticipated the scale and anger from the parents. Jasmine presented the full story, every detail, every event, every piece of evidence. She demanded not only transparency, but also specific actions. Immediate suspension of Mr. Blake and Mr. Sam, an independent investigation, and a commitment to change from the school. Reluctantly, the school agreed to suspend Mr. Blake and Mr. Sam during the investigation. However, the situation did not end there. Under pressure from the community, the Cedar Ridge police launched an official investigation. Police began interviewing parents, students, and school staff. The videos, images, and testimonies from the meeting became irrefutable evidence. Mr. Blake was accused of several charges, including discrimination and endangering a student by deliberately abandoning Mia on a desolate road. Mr. Sam was also accused of abuse of power, clearly demonstrated by his discriminatory treatment of parents. During the investigation, many other students and families continued to speak out. Some students admitted that Mr. Blake often mocked black students on the bus, calling them insulting nicknames. A former Evergreen staff member revealed that Mr. Sam had received numerous complaints about his behavior, but the school had deliberately ignored them. While the investigation was ongoing, the Cedar Ridge community began to change. White parents, who had initially remained silent, now spoke up in support of the Carter family. Some admitted they had witnessed the injustices but had been too afraid to speak out. The wave of anger spread, forcing the school and local authorities to face unprecedented pressure. A large community meeting was held at the town center. Hundreds of people attended, not only parents but also reporters and activists for equality. Jasmine and David stepped up to the podium, sharing their story with the crowd. When they spoke of Mia's tears and the pain their family had endured, the room went silent and then erupted into applause and support. The investigation, which lasted for several weeks, exposed the systematic discriminatory actions of Mr. Blake and Mr. Sam. With undeniable evidence, including a video of Mr. Blake deliberately abandoning Mia in the pouring rain, along with testimonies from dozens of other families, both men were eventually subjected to severe penalties. Mr. Blake, the cold bus driver, was sentenced to 18 months in prison for discrimination, endangering children, and gross negligence in his duties. His driver's license was permanently revoked, and he was no longer allowed to work in the transportation industry or any job related to children. Meanwhile, Mr. Sam, the grumpy security guard with an indifferent attitude, was charged with abuse of power and systematic discrimination. He was sentenced to 24 months of probation and 100 hours of community service at a children's support center. Once proud of his position at the school, Mr. Sam now faced the loss of his honor and criticism from the entire community. At the trial, both men initially remained defiant, even denying responsibility. But when the evidence was presented, especially the video of Mia shivering in the cold rain, along with the emotional testimonies from the affected families, both Mr. Blake and Mr. Sam could no longer conceal the truth. Mr. Blake bowed his head, silenced by the sound of Mia's sobs in the courtroom. His eyes were bloodshot, and his voice cracked as he apologized to Mia and the Carter family. But the late apology was not enough to erase the harm he had caused. Mr. Sam, who had once confidently used the excuse of just following the rules, now had no reason to defend himself. In his final speech before the court, he admitted he had not performed his duties fairly and had acted unethically. Yet, his eyes were filled with regret as he looked toward Jasmine, the mother who had relentlessly fought for justice. The consequences both men faced were not only legal punishment, but also the rejection of the entire Cedar Ridge community. Their reputations were destroyed, and they were isolated in the very town they had once called home. Both Mr. Blake and Mr. Sam now had to live with the guilt, realizing that their seemingly small but prejudiced actions had caused wounds that could never fade. The school, after the incident, implemented widespread reforms. Equality and anti-discrimination training sessions were held, not just for staff but also for students. A new monitoring system was set up, including cameras on buses and a hotline for parents and students to report injustices without fear of being ignored. For the Carter family, this fight was not just about protecting Mia, but also about changing the mindset in the community. Mia gradually regained her confidence. On her first day back at school with a new bus driver, she was greeted with warm smiles and friendly greetings. Jasmine and David stood from afar, watching their daughter board the bus, feeling relieved that they had done the right thing. This event marked not only a significant turning point for Cedar Ridge, but also became a powerful reminder. Late regret cannot erase guilt, but unity and righteous action can change an entire community. After facing injustice for so long, Mia gradually regained her confidence and joy in life. The change came not only from her parents' efforts, but also from the widespread reforms in the school and the Cedar Ridge community. Now, Mia no longer feared going to school. On the contrary, she felt a safe and hopeful environment where those around her not only did their jobs well, but also treated every student with respect and kindness. One cool morning, as Jasmine and David saw Mia off to the bus, they couldn't help but notice the new look of the bus. The shiny yellow bus was now equipped with surveillance cameras and a new driver. The driver, a middle-aged woman with a kind face, smiled at Mia as she stepped on. She bent down to check on Mia's well-being and greeted each student warmly. This image was in stark contrast to the cold attitude and discriminatory behavior that Mr. Blake had shown. At the school gate, Mr. Sam no longer stood guard with a scowling face and a discriminatory gaze. Instead, a new security guard, Mr. Marcus, a former military man with a friendly demeanor and professional attitude, greeted parents and students with a warm smile. Mr. Marcus carefully directed Jasmine and other parents to the drop-off area, always ready to assist when needed. Jasmine recalled the stressful early days at the school gate and couldn't help but feel relieved that things had now changed. At the school, teachers and staff were thoroughly trained in equality and respecting diversity. Regular meetings were held to listen to feedback from parents and students, ensuring that no one was left behind. Every day, Jasmine felt the difference when dropping Mia off at school, seeing the new people in old roles working with responsibility and dedication. Cedar Ridge had now undergone a transformation. The reforms not only brought fairness, but also created an environment where everyone felt respected. The Carter family stood at a distance, watching Mia board the bus with a cheerful driver who greeted her like a member of the family. Jasmine smiled, her eyes shining with pride and relief. As the bus slowly drove away, Jasmine and David held hands tightly, knowing that their struggle had not only brought justice for Mia, but also opened up a better future for all the children in Cedar Ridge. These new individuals, with their different attitudes, had proven that change was not only necessary, but entirely possible if we are determined and united. The Carter family story is not only a personal journey in search of justice, but also a profound lesson about the power of perseverance, courage, and the importance of community in upholding shared values. First and foremost, it teaches us that injustice must be spoken out against and confronted. If Jasmine and David had remained silent in the face of the discrimination Mia endured, not only would their daughter have continued to suffer, but many other children in the community would have also become victims. Silence is not the solution. Only decisive action can bring about real change. The Carter family's struggle emphasizes that even if you are a small group, standing up for what is right can transform an unjust system. Another lesson comes from the strength of solidarity. At first, Jasmine and David seemed alone in their fight, but as they called for support and shared Mia's story, other families began to speak up. This proves that when a community unites and works toward a common goal, any barrier can be broken. The collective determination of the parents forced the school and local authorities to take responsibility and implement significant reforms. Respect for diversity and equality is another important lesson derived from the story. Every individual, regardless of skin color, background, or origin, deserves to be treated with respect and fairness. Even small acts of discrimination can cause great harm, especially to children, and fighting to eliminate them is the responsibility of society as a whole. The story also highlights that change is not something that happens naturally. It requires action, persistence, and the courage to face challenges. Jasmine and David not only protected their daughter, but also contributed to changing a long-standing unjust system in the Cedar Ridge community. They are proof that one person who dares to stand up can inspire and motivate others. Late regret cannot undo the consequences. This is a big lesson for people like Mr. Blake and Mr. Sam. They paid a heavy price, not only with their careers, but also with their reputation and the trust of the community. Their regret came too late and could not compensate for the harm they had caused. This serves as a reminder that each person must act rightly from the beginning to avoid causing irreparable consequences. Most importantly, the Carter family's story emphasizes that children must be protected, listened to, and trusted. Mia, though just a young girl, endured significant psychological damage due to the unjust actions of adults. Without the timely intervention of her parents, these wounds could have stayed with her for life. This shows that listening to and responding to children's concerns is essential in creating a safe and healthy environment for their development. Finally, the Carter family story is a powerful reminder that we can change communities and society, but it requires courage, determination, and responsibility from each individual. Despite facing great challenges, with faith and unity, justice and equality will always be the ultimate outcome. The story ends with the image of a new Cedar Ridge community, where every child is welcomed and valued, proving that any change, no matter how difficult, is entirely possible.